Welcome here, everyone, to another episode of the Aftermath, which is the LPL recap. We are deep into weeks 4 and 5, and I mean, it's been a very entertaining moment. Last time we cut off at the very end of week 4, which saw the rise of a lot of teams that we were quite surprised about, and now heading into week 5 towards the end, looking at week number 6. And as we turn over into the new month, it's going to be a whole lot of excitement, whether it be some teams continuing their reign of terror or seeing some teams make some very important swaps here in the middle of the season. My name is Orbital. With me is Ferris. We will be your of course, death side here in one way or another, with Yanni sleeping underneath because Yanni has been working a little bit too much. Yanni has been doing way too much, in my opinion. The man is a goat for a reason. Ferris, how you doing today?
Orbital, doing pretty good, man. We're getting to veering closer towards playoffs. It's crazy to think that after all of this, we're actually just crossing the halfway point of Group
It's
Ascent.
crazy.
Nirvana, on the other hand, is starting to wrap up. There's
Yep.
even a couple teams that are actually done. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Yanni's not with us. Yanni's been going crazy. Last night covered the RNG OMG series, BLG Weibo as well. So
Yep.
he's upside down, taking a rest. We're ready here to kind of break down the last week. There's a couple interesting stories, a little bit of shifts in
Yeah.
terms of how strong teams are playing. We'll talk about them when we actually get into it. But there's been some key developments here, but also in Nirvana as well. As Nirvana actually is, like I said earlier, starting to wrap up, starting to get to the point where it's like, okay, we really know who is going to be in which positions here, and there's
Yep.
actually only a couple teams fighting for, that bottom, the bottom three they're at risk of, and then fighting for that top two, fighting for that middle two. So
Yeah.
we're slowly but surely getting to the parts where it's really like, we gotta say, every single game really starts to have big implications on all these teams.
Oh, of course, and that's kind of the fun of it. Of course, this time around, we're trying something a little bit different. We're going to be breaking down all 5 or 15 of the matches that I've played so far in chunks, so you can go ahead and digest it a little bit, and we'll dive right in. So, to start out, the 5 games that we are going to be taking a look at to start out here is, of course, going to be, Brain is on here. It is going to be Ultra Prime versus Edward Gaming, Thunder Talk versus JDG, Ninjas in Pajamas versus Anyone's Legend, Weibo Gaming versus Invictus Gaming, Top Esports versus JDG. And in all these matches, I feel like there was some interesting factors, but it was that kick that we needed going into the weekend.
So I feel like, again, Thunder Talk, Ninjas in Pajamas, it really feels like the trend that they're on is like, this season is kind of chalked. This split is kind of chalked. Of course, they're going to be able to get to the play-ins despite likely finishing in that bottom 6. But I mean, these were expected results. Thunder Talk actually taking a game off of JDG. I think you can give like maybe a 0.2% boost in their stock. But other than that, it's kind of just the same old struggle. NIP get blasted by AL. But then the other 3 games, especially we'll start with kind of the Nirvana matchup, Ultra Prime, EDG. Again, Ultra Prime took the loss to LNG, which was like really devastating. You expected them with LNG turning around their season. You thought at that time that Ultra Prime should have taken that win. They should have been able to be contesting very handedly for that top 2. That was my top 2 going into it. Now with the win, or actually it's Ultra Prime that did come out here with the win. I had my things flipped here, but EDG
Yeah.
is at the top of the standings. Ultra Prime is kind of lingering around that middle pack.
Well, they're
So
tied
flipping my
now.
narrative.
Yeah, I think the whole thing is that they're tied now is the problem, right? They're tied now with LGD on that 3-1 standing.
Yeah, Ultra Prime's still 2-1, so they still have two. They still have 2 matches to go. EDG is
Yep.
3-1, so Ultra Prime getting that win is very big. I think Top Esports versus JDG, a clash between the 2 top teams. Top Esports able to grab the win, again improving that them alongside Anyone's Legends still kind of at that upper echelon. And then the real meat and potatoes for me with these 5 is Weibo versus IG, because we're starting to see the resurgence of Weibo begin at this stage of the week, and
Yep.
then starting the IG downtrend, which, spoiler, is going to continue for the rest of the week.
Oh, why'd you have to do that? It was a rough one, but as we can, I'll go ahead and mention all of those as you already cleared. But for those that may not have been keeping track, JDG beat Thunder Talk 2-1. Anyone's Legend beat Ninjas in Pajamas 2-0. And it was Weibo Gaming taking down IG 2-1. Top Esports beat out JDG 2-1 just as well. And then Ultra Prime taking the victory over Edward Gaming. So all of those kind of completing in that order. Next up was the next side that we saw on Monday, Tuesday, and I believe halfway on Wednesday. And again, we want to break these down into digestible chunks, a little bit easier there. we do take a look at the LNG versus RNG matchup, BLG versus FPX matchup, LGD versus EDG, WBG versus BLG, and then JDG versus TT. All these matches were, I would say, very fun to watch at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, it's LPL. Things get exciting. Things are fast paced, and I mean, again, JDG Thunder Talk 2-0 for JDG. Expected Thunder Talk NIP, the clear bottom two teams in Group Ascend. And this is where EDG kind of bounced back from the loss against Ultra Prime. The 2-1 over LGD, their first loss, LGD's first loss in Nirvana, showing that there is some contention for that top spot. Again,
Yep.
these are the two teams headlining those top two spots to get into play-ins, each of them with one more game left to play. But this was a huge pickup for EDG, knocking down a team that a lot of people might have expected them to actually lose to. So EDG is doing quite a good job, a lot better than I thought thus far. In Group Nirvana, we have LNG, the massive win over RNG, really cementing
This
themselves as a team
was
that's just 180 their season. It's insane.
it was so much fun to watch it. This is why I said I enjoyed this one a little bit more. RNG obviously stumbling at the very end, and they are on the cusp of being on that chopping block. We mentioned that there are only a few more games for them to play, I believe. All they have is one more matchup. That'll be coming up, I believe, next week or so. They're sitting at a 1-3 stance. The only one that they are hoping to take down and kind of move down a peg would be Ultra Prime, who for themselves are a little bit shaky, here and there, but that's the danger. And thankfully, they don't have to worry about OMG, in my opinion, that much because, we'll talk about them a little bit later, of course. But OMG straddling a rough point, and this matchup win was huge for LNG just to go ahead and put another little icing on there and say, hey, listen, it's not all what everyone thought it was going to be.
And Xiaofeng being put into the jungle instead of 5T5. This is their second jungle substitution
Yep.
for LNG for the season. And we're actually seeing this trend with a lot of bottom Nirvana teams. They're just trying shit. And
Yeah.
honestly, at this point, that's what you have to do. We saw it with OMG this week. They brought in Charlotte. I think they did that towards the tail end of last week. OMG also brought in Beishang. So they're just trying different things. And it finally has clicked for LNG. I think they are safe from being eliminated for split 3 now, which I'm very happy about because as not great as they are, I do like Zika. I think he is a player who has kind of been the real in a little bit of elo hell on this squad. I think Hai Chao has some of his moments. And so I do want to see these players for split 3. Like the players on OMG, not so much. So I'm happy that LNG was able to turn out for my own personal reasons. But we've left out 2 matches here, and both of them involve BLG. And this, again, we talked about the IG downtrend. We
Yep.
last week hinted at a jungle change for BLG. This hadn't happened yet. That change hadn't happened. Wei was still in the jungle here in their loss to FPX and their 2-1 loss to Weibo.
Yep.
But this is where you start to ring the alarm bells for BLG. And you like, okay, this team just definitely does not look like the way they were
Nope.
playing before. They were throwing a bunch of early games. Again, their players are so good. They make the fights close. But then just because the fact that they were kind of just throwing things around in the early game, falling behind, they just couldn't pull it back. And they were able to successfully bring back game 2 against Weibo, but that Weibo series really felt like just a 3-0 for Weibo with a throw in game 2. So it was this at this point, after the 2-1 from Weibo, after they had already lost to FPX, where it's like, dude, BLG might actually be cooked. They need to do something and they need to do it now.
Yeah, they rang the alarms, and I mean, this was hinted at even before. I mean, you and I had talked about it. I know Yanni has talked about it on socials that there were some rumors about a change in there, and this was kind of that final stomping point, that final moment where we were like, yeah, it needed to be said, it needed to be done here. Granted, though, in that time frame, it was nice for WBG. You take a look at Weibo, and they sat there with that victory in that week, saying, okay, this is great for us because you've actually matched out with some of the other, I would say, top 5 or not top 5. Obviously, there are 2 that are still sitting at the top of the standings, which we'll discuss at the very end, talking about our breakdown so far. But the fact that for Weibo, you need to keep yourself at the top of the standings, they were able to kind of shake out at that point to a 5 series lead and making sure that they were within that upper 6 heading into the second half.
Yeah, it is really good for Weibo because they actually were the team that played the most
Yeah.
in this last week. They
Yeah.
played 4 matches. They have played a lot of League of Legends. And again, we still have another match to talk about against BLG later on, but up to this point here, where we're 10 out of 15 games in, they're 3-0. And there was a point where Weibo earlier on in the weeks were losing games to FPX, they were losing games to Team WE, and in my opinion, with the way that they looked, they were falling down. In my own sort of assessment of how strong Weibo was, they were falling down into that bottom 3, bottom 4 area. It just
Yeah.
did not, it kind of felt lifeless for that squad. It felt like Light was just putting everyone on his back, trying to drag Xiaohu and gang over the finish line. But they've really brought it back. Xiaohu's had some pretty insane pop off performances. Tian looks pretty stable. Light, again, the most consistent player, in my opinion. And also, you can't count out Urha. They brought in Urha for Hong, and Urha has really started to hit his stride, especially in this week, making confident plays and being what looks like a very potent shot caller for Weibo as well.
Yeah, it was it was such a nice little test, and then of course, as we mentioned, JDG and Thunder Talk. But since we're on the subject of Weibo Gaming, let's go ahead and head into the last 5 matches that we had just coming up. Last 2 basically played this morning of recording, and more to be played throughout to complete the week 5 setup. In our last 5 that we have here on the day, this is where the big changes came through. And Weibo, unfortunately, Weibo Gaming had the biggest enjoyment and I want to say disappointment because of some of these changes, because before we dive into these 5, there was a big shape up for BLG specifically. There was mention and rumors, and now we go ahead and hear that there was a move from Thunder Talk, BLG acquiring a new jungler as well.
Yeah, so I think in the JDG series in the previous 5, we talked about Thunder Talk actually played without Beishuan. They
Mhm.
played Xiao Hong Ren. And there's been a couple jungler substitutions for many teams in the LPL. This one didn't particularly look super impactful for Thunder Talk side. So that was really where we knew, where it's like, okay, this is likely going to be BLG Beishuan. That was the big rumor.
Yep.
I don't think Thunder Talk would kick out Beishuan for any other reason. He's actually been one of their more stable players across splits 1 and 2. And so they bring in Xiao Hongren. They end up losing badly to JDG. And we see Beishuan debut later on this morning for BLG, and it actually
Literally
looks pretty
only
darn
about
good for
6
them.
hours ago or so, 6 or 7
Yeah,
hours ago.
yeah, and their match beforehand, Weibo's match beforehand was against IG, and it was a 2-1 for them. And I'm a little disappointed with the way that IG has played this week. It's just been loss after loss after loss. They haven't played necessarily any weak teams. It's not like they lost to a Thunder Talk. They haven't lost to a team WE, who I still think are formidable-ish teams, and I could see IG losing to them. But especially the biggest match for me was against Anyone's Legend, where that was virtually Orbital 2 games of like 20 kills to nothing, just under 30 minutes. It's just like
Yeah.
they got obliterated. And IG feel at this point, with their current strength, things they clicked in early split 2 for them. They went 6-0 in their group. We were like, okay, IG is back. They kind of
Yeah.
flubbed the playoffs in split 1. Now they're hitting their stride. This is where this team is finally going to click. And it hasn't happened. They just
Yeah.
do not have that it factor, that connection, that synergy to go toe to toe with these top 5 teams. And that this week really showed that.
They got clotheslined is the best way to put it. They were on the
Yeah.
upwards trend and they were looking great. I don't have any other words for them except they got clotheslined. They walked straight into Anyone's Legend. Anyone's Legend shut them up pretty definitively. And for Anyone's Legend, I mean, we already know they're at the top of the standings. We know they're going to continue to stay at the top of the standings. For me, the test comes out, as you mentioned, if you're talking about IG's side, Anyone's Legend, I mean, we haven't had to talk about them specifically, to be quite honest. I mean, they just rock whatever they want to do, right? And granted, I believe in this week they didn't have as many matches. I believe we saw them play twice, right, over the course of 15. So it wasn't like they
Yeah.
had the biggest up and down trend, but in their matches that they won, they did it comfortably. So I gotta agree, IG is one of those that, yes, they still have an opportunity. Do not get me wrong. Depending on some of how the other shakeouts kind of go, there is a theoretical possibility that they will make it into the immediate 4. And this is what we're talking about, right? When we talk about these placements, yes, the entirety of Group Ascend will have a shot at playoffs, but the trajectory and how they do so, if you have to have a secondary step in through that play-ins, that is what we're really seeing there. And that cutoff point is once again right where WBG as well as BLG are currently sitting at that 4th and 5th position. So it's just it kind of feels bad. IG is sitting at a 5-6 record right now. And I hate agreeing with you only because IG is just like, you want to believe. You really, really do. But they are sitting at that 5-6 right now. Only ones below them that we are, how we have mentioned a little bit, is FPX and Team WE, both of them sitting at 7th and 8th. And then NIP and Thunder Talk obviously sitting at the very bottom of the standings after this last set of matches. All these matches that were played across this morning and yesterday.
Yeah, and that leads us to today, where we have RNG going up against OMG. Again,
Yeah.
OMG able to bring this to 3, which I guess is something for them in terms of their morale. Hooray, we were able to do it. But I think they are definitely, I think they're locked into that elimination spot for Split 3. I think they're done, sitting at 0-4 right now, I do believe. Yeah, they are going to be for sure done for Split 2 and 3. I think it's still doable for RNG. They have to pray for Ultra Prime to lose one of their next matchups. And Ultra Prime, their next matchups are against OMG, which I guess we can pretty much say is likely going to be a win for them. And then up against LGD, which is not so much a free win. So if RNG is able to grab up a win in their next matchup, which is against Edward Gaming, and then Ultra Prime do drop down there is a world where we go to tiebreakers. But I do think Ultra Prime has that head-to-head over RNG, so maybe that plays a factor in as well. Those are the kind of the big implications that come from that matchup that happened there. Big win for RNG, obviously their first of Group Nirvana, and then it's BLG and it's Weibo, and this is where we see the debut of Beishuan. I'm not going to necessarily say it was a jaw-dropping debut here. Obviously, BLG still drop a game, but what they were able to overcome was, and in a lot of their losses, Orbital, was they lose game 1. They kind of throw things, or they throw it away early game. They try and bring it back. They're all really talented players. Like I was saying before, it's just not enough. They stomp game 2, play like 2024 BLG, and then it's a rinse and repeat of game 1, and they end up losing the series 2-1. This time they clutch up. They have a really smooth early game, and they're able to propel that with their strong team fighting. The fact that Knight is still performing like a beast in the mid lane, they can kind of piggyback off of that, and they can get the win here. It feels like there is glimpses for BLG. Beishuan can be this aggressive jungler. I feel like that's what they want. They want that aggression. They want that facilitator kind of, the stride that they hit with Shun, where Shun was always diving bot. Shun was getting Elk ahead, and they were able to just snowball that lead and turn it into really clean wins. That's the area they want to get back to, and we saw glimpses of that there. Their game 2 win against Weibo was like 24-1. It was disgusting. It was like an absolute annihilation. And that's where BLG want to get to. I think they're close. They're still playing really aggressive. They're missing that sort of calculated aspect that they had in 2024, where it was like 90% of the time, the psychotic plays they're making are going to work out in their favor. This time it feels a little bit more like, are they going to actually do something here, or are they just going to coin flip and throw the game?
I like how you keep saying that, and yet this is one of the best hopes that you could have for like entering in the second half of any round robin. Hey, we randomly slotted in this jungler. We randomly picked up this jungler, and hey, we immediately come up with a dub. Like I take that any day of the week. Normally, it takes time.
It is a good sign.
Especially grabbing someone from one of the bottom teams. Let's be honest, grabbing someone from Thunder Talk and saying, hey, like this is our key play, is a wild call. Anyone like just at face value is normally just like that's a move of desperation that is not normally coming out of a mid-tier team. So the fact that BLG opted for that is a very impressive play, and it gives an immediate hope to all BLG fans of being like, yo, this is the move. You have to believe us. Like you have to sit here and believe us. We literally just lost to WBG earlier, like just like a day ago. We just lost to WBG, and now we turn around and beat them. Like that's great. Like in the entire cusp of what just went down for BLG, I think I'm not saying you're wrong for the fact that hey, they still need time, they still need to bump up, but in this kind of vacuum, I will say this is an amazing turnaround for BLG all day long. Like this is the best situation you could ever hope for. I stand by that. Like way more praise there.
Yeah, I agree, and I think I avoided a little bit of that fact there, so it's good that you caught that. But like, yes, this is very good for them, and I also think on top of that, if we cheat ahead a little bit and look at what BLG is doing in their next couple of days, they have a matchup against FPX, who it's safe to say is definitely a weaker team than
Yeah.
Weibo.
Oh yeah.
BLG formerly taking the loss to FPX this week, so again, another bounce back game. They're kind of just playing the flip of what they did in their first half of Group Ascend, and then it's Thunder Talk. So these are two weaker teams. They're not going up against a top esports right away. They're
Yeah.
not going up against anyone's legend. So again, if there's still more to build on with this relationship with Beishuan and the rest of his teammates, his new teammates in BLG, they
Yeah.
can kind of iron things out against opponents that aren't necessarily just going to pile drive them through the mat, if that makes sense.
It's too real there. And the scary thing is, I could be completely wrong. That's the terrifying thing about this because I want to give credit where credit is due because I have a feeling that there is also a chance that it's just completely torpedoes, right? One matchup against WBG, it does not give perspective on the rest. It's not like we can foresee the future. But the fact is that yeah, their strength of schedule, this is like the best time to kind of bump up Bejuan and maybe even try and test things out in their own factor as well for BLG if we do see them kind of rock some of those more unorthodox styles, especially against the likes of Thunder Talk, maybe a little bit further down the road, or even against FPX. That would be the time to try it. But it is going to be that testing ground. I'm just really happy it got off on the right foot. I will always say this no matter what. Anytime you have a roster change of this nature and you fall flat on your face, like you take an O2 or you immediately drop, multiple BO1s if that's, if we're in LTA North or anything like that, it's the worst feeling in the world. I don't like that is the most horrendous, just like shit, guys. Like maybe we fucked up, maybe we don't have that right. And I will use my one F bomb for this because it was just like if that happened, you would have to be looking back and going like Beishuan was not the answer. Maybe it was something else in there. So I'm really happy they got off on the right foot. Taking a look at the 5 matches that we have over the weekend, though, I want to ask you real quickly, Ferris, what matchup are you really looking forward to? Which is the one that you are really hoping to watch and get a good eye on? Because we got Team WE versus NIP, BLG versus FPX, we got Top going up against IG, we got Ultra Prime versus OMG, and AL versus Top Esports, kind of rounding out on that Sunday.
Yeah, there's a lot of good matches in just this next strain of 5 here. I think as far as standings go, I think the most important matchups are going to have to be like there's a lot of important matchups when it comes to standings. I'll give you my as a fan of the LPL, what am I most excited to watch? I'm most excited to watch Top Esports versus Anyone's Legend because that
Mm,
is the
yep.
top, the literal S tier top two teams again going to
Yeah.
clash with each other. The previous head to head is a Top Esports 2-1 over Anyone's Legend. So this is where AL need to prove themselves that they are again not a whole lot of room to prove because they are already one of the top teams, but really the team that they've yet to solve has been Top Esports. I mean, they
Yeah.
beat them in the grand finals of the Split One playoffs. They just beat them at their first matchup in the Rumble stage. So AL, it's their chance to fire back. When it comes to, I guess, two other important things to note. BLG, again, like we talked about, all those things here. Can they
Yeah.
continue with Beishuan in the roster? Can they keep the wins going against FPX? And IG, after a very disappointing week, now have a first matchup against the number one team in the league. So it's a really scary matchup. If they can win, though, they already beat Top Esports here, which is the crazy thing. If they can win again, they get that confidence boost back and show that there is a world where this team can play with the top teams. No pun intended, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be a scary first matchup for them going into this week. I think the Shy specifically, if we want to target a certain player on IG, has to be on because he has been painfully inconsistent and it has actually with his poor performances been a big detriment here to IG. If we're going to have to kind of pinpoint something that they need to work on to get over the hump there against Tess.
Yeah, for me actually, I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of interested to see Ultra Prime versus OMG. If there's any upset in the Nirvana stage, because that's where a lot of that danger lies. We talk about top esports and sitting at the top of the standings. For them, Group Ascend, like there is not as much harm and more danger in there because the top 4 obviously make it into the play-ins or playoffs automatically. Bottom 6 go into the play-in night stage. So like I get that. But to me, my eyes are still locked on OMG. No one wants to go 0-5, in their group stage. No one wants to be flat out just like gone, bro. That that would send me, I'm pretty sure. Like we know OMG is already locked out. you want to drag someone down with you. And Ultra Prime was predicted as that other squad, like predicted as that other squad to go down. So I wonder if OMG are going to be able to kind of drag Ultra Prime and put them in that precarious position as well. I believe that matchup is going on right before the likes of anyone's Legend and top esports. So it's like very bottom of the barrel and then very top of the barrel at the same time, the two dichotomies right there. So, you were talking about anyone's Legend and top esports, obviously top of the standings, and then, of course, top playing the very next day as well. My eyes are still drawn to Ultra Prime. I'm not gonna lie. Ultra Prime and OMG is gonna be something just for the standings value, but it's gonna be a good time. And I think Ferris, this is one of those moments that we do just kind of sit there and go, this is why we love the LPL. At the end of the day, right now, we just for the first time, I think, really got a full shakeout of all the standings. Right, top esports, anyone's Legends, JDG and WBG are all currently sitting in the top 4 position. Everyone else shaken out down below in standard order. Over in Group Nirvana, as we just went over Group Ascend, you got EDG and LGD currently tied at 3 and 1. And then in the middle of the group, you got LNG versus Ultra Prime, both of them sitting at 3rd and 4th. And then, of course, RNG and OMG shaking out. So all of these matches so far have been interesting to say the least, but again, it always feels like all these groups can still shake them. Nirvana, obviously not, but like Group Ascend, you could see this flipping in certain directions depending on which site you look at on the standings.
And for WE, now WE kind of has we haven't been able to talk a lot about WE because they didn't play any games this week, but
Yeah.
next week they play 4 matches.
Yes.
So another
Essentially,
exciting
they're
thing.
super weak type beat. So
Yeah, kind of like what Weibo did this week. They're sitting
mhm.
at 3 and 6, but they're still on that 3-game win streak. So they still have their momentum now. Was that killed with a week's break, or is it just going to be furthermore propelled considering they've been able to really look at some stuff, look at extra tape because the other teams have been playing and first match against NIP, extremely winnable. NIP has really not looked the best here. So if they can get their 4th win in a row, really start their week off to a hot start, I'm excited to see what Team WE can do. It feels like the FPX hype train has kind of died down. They've taken a couple hits, but Team WE still kind of really riding off that really strong week number 4. I think they're the team I'm most excited to look for as a big story heading into our next week.
It's going to be a whole lot of stories to watch for and a whole lot of fun. I mean, it's interesting. We're getting some of the shakeups, and again, we're just halfway through is the wild thing. Again, Ferris, you mentioned this. It's weird to think that we're only halfway through. There's going to be so much more to watch for. And of course, over the weekend, you can go ahead and grab the LPL English broadcast that'll be forecasted to start up. Watch all the amazing action across. You can see our lovely friend Yanni, who is currently sleeping, of course, but other friendly faces. I mean, we had Slayer on the desk a while ago, which we might have back. You never know. And getting some eyes, maybe some fresh faces. But the LPL English will, of course, be covering all the action throughout the rest of the Rumble stage, as well as the play-in for the playoffs, and then the playoffs, I'm sure, themselves. All on the English side, so go ahead and follow them over there on Twitch, which I believe is LPL_English. If you like what we do here, though, and you always want to try and keep up, feel free to go ahead, drop us a like, drop us a follow, and maybe leave an angry comment about how Yanni is always sleeping and never on one of these podcasts. No hate to him, though. He does a lot more work, as always. Of course, thank you so much for tuning into this one. Once again, as I said, go ahead, hit that like button, smash that follow. We appreciate all of y'all, and we'll see you next time. Again, my name is Ordo. With me is Ferris. Thank you for watching the Aftermath.